So, once a year, you've got the dreaded MOT test. Today, hopefully, I'm going to make a video to show you a procedure, or the best procedure, to check that your vehicle's safe to be on the road and therefore a guaranteed pass on the MOT. Later on in the year, I'm going to make a separate one for the Land Rover because they're just in different leagues. 4x4s are notorious for failing MOTs. So I'm going to use this 2012 Nissan Duke. It's got 70,000 miles on it, so I don't think it's a low mileage car. It's due its test next month. It's due a service now, so I'm going to have a look around it for the service, but as well I'm going to check it out, see if it'll pass an MOT. If you are new to the MOT and you're becoming a tester, the most important thing is procedure. Once you get a procedure in place, you can go in any car you want and follow your own procedure and without missing anything. There's a lot of corruption on MOTs. You tend to find some garages are really struggling and looking for work. So they'll offer cheap MOTs, like £15–20 MOTs. They'll get them in and they'll fail them just to get some work. Now, I have heard of it, it is going on. So if you take your car in and it fails on something, I don't know, brake pads are low, we'll say, but you've done an inspection on your car and you know those brake pads are fine, you can turn around and say, right, that's not on, I'm going to get in touch with Vosa, and you can take it further. You can actually go really far with it. So it's more for you knowing that your car's alright. You're not going to get ripped off by anybody. The only thing that an MOT tester is allowed to do is a visual inspection. He's not allowed to remove wheels, he's not allowed to change bulbs until the test is over. Within that hour, I think you get an hour slot to do a safety inspection on the vehicle. That is it. A lot of people think you're supposed to remove wheels on MOTs and all sorts. It's not. They're allowed to pull it on, safety inspect it, jack it up, check the brakes, check the emissions. That's it. So the tools you'll need is a tread depth gauge for measuring your tyres, 2 axle stands, a jack, a pry bar, and something to wedge the brake pedal. And if you're not very good at remembering things, or your car's got a list as long as your arm, you'll need a notepad. So to kick off, I'm going to show you my procedure for when I was doing MOT tests. As long as you check everything, you can have your own procedure. You can pull it on the ramp, send it up in the air if you want to. If that's easier for you, crack on. But this is my procedure. I always start off inside the car. So you get in, and if you are training to be a tester, take the mileage down. You'll all get on for a test, the last 6 to in, take the mileage down. Now, from getting in the car, it's a fail. Straight away, it's a fail. Because there's air fresheners all over the wing mirror. So you need to remove anything from the screen. The dash cam not so much because it's not in direct vision. That is in direct vision of the passenger side of the windscreen. So that is an instant fail. So remove anything that's attached to the wing mirror before even taking your car for a test. You're then going to check see if the steering lock works, which it does. So after the steering lock, you're going to check see if the hazards are working. Now on a car, I think it's over 1990, something like that, the hazards need to work without the key in the ignition. So this is keyless entry, so the ignition's not on, it's working, they're working fine. Pump all the air out of the servo system, so the brake pedal's gone really hard now. You're going to push down and start the car up. As you can see, my foot moves down, that proves the servo's working. So your servo assisted brakes, your brake pedal's gone back to normal, that's working fine. So yeah, power steering's working, horn works, front washers and wipers. You're going to check the wipers, they're all clearing the screen nicely. You're going to check the windscreen for chips and cracks, which there's none in this at all. So what can happen on some cars, you've got to check that all the lights are on. So if the car's fitted with electric power steering, ABS, you've got to check that those lights light up on the dash. So hold that in, all the lights have come on. I can see the power steering light, I can see the ABS lights come on and gone off. So I know that the ABS system's working. I know the power steering system's working. The engine management light, you're checking that that actually comes on and goes off. Because what happens is if there's a fault on the ABS, people either take the bulb out of the dash or sometimes cover them up, just because it might be expensive to repair, or they don't want to repair it and they're trying to get it through an MOT. So that is something that you have got to check works. So all the lights have now gone off. The only lights that are left on is, let's say I've not got my seatbelt on, the door's open and the handbrake is on. So that goes off and comes on. So that is something you must look out for. Make sure the lights come on and make sure they go off in the correct procedure. So the passenger door, you've got to make sure that opens from the inside. Yeah, fine. So checking the bearing on the steering column, there's no play whatsoever in that. The handbrake, release the handbrake, you're pulling it up to make sure the clicks work. Give it a tap on the top, that's nice and secure. But with the handbrake you're also checking that it's not going to the maximum of its travel. So this is nice, it only comes up 4 or 5 clicks. Seats, make sure the seat is nice and secure. That one as well. Rear view mirror, that's nice and secure. So I've just turned the engine off so you can hear me better. So I then get out of the car and then I check the seat belts. So now you're better to check see if the seats are secure. On this side, yeah, that's secure. It doesn't matter if they've got these covers on, as long as you check underneath them. So you're looking for any tears and rips, mile about, or any fraying of the seat belt. But you're also checking to see if it's secure. I've checked under that, so I pull it all the way out, locks, give it a pull, yeah, that's fine. Retract it back, that lock's fine, no problems there. And then plug them in, and what you're doing, you're actually pulling on the clamp to check that the mountings are right, but also you've got to check that the seat belt releases under tension, like that. If there is a child seat fitted anywhere in the car, obviously not the driver's seat, you cannot disturb that seat. So from a tester's point of view, you're not allowed to check it. You're not allowed to take the seat out to check the seat belt. You've just got to advise that there's a child seat fitted and you're unable to check that belt. If you're checking it at home for your own car, it's up to you. You can check it, or if you know it's alright, just leave it, it's up to you. So I'll just check the rest quickly now. Put the lights on so when I walk around I can check them. I can see now that both the full beam lights are working. Just put the dip beam on and the rear fog. So after checking the seat belts and all the interior, I can now start looking around the car. So check see if the mirrors are secure, check any body damage, any sharp edges, hazards. So yeah, that's the correct colour, because if your indicators are white, fail, instant fail. Yeah, they're working. This has white side lights, so it is a pass. If they're blue or any sort of tinge of blue, fail. They've got to be either white for the DRLs. Oh yeah, DRLs. So if you've got DRL headlights, just move over here. So if your car's fitted with daytime running lights, just make sure when you turn the side lights on that they dim, they actually dim. And if you've got aftermarket DRLs, they have to do the same as well, because they're too bright for nighttime driving. So yeah, I always give them a tap round, make sure that bumper's on secure, that light's secure, that light's secure, that's the correct colour. Number plates, make sure the number plate's secure, and also make sure the number plate's not delaminated. You can read it from a distance, otherwise it's a fail. Your front fog lights are not part of the MOT, so if one of them doesn't work, or the front fog lights don't work at all, pass, it's fine, don't worry about it, it doesn't come into the test. Make sure if there is any damage on the bumpers that there's no sharp edges, otherwise it's a fail. So the mirrors, check sure the mirrors are secure and the mirror glass isn't cracked. Same again, bumpers, lights. Rear wiper does not come into the MOT. Good job, because this one's knackered. Bumpers, fog light, that works. Number plate lights, we've got a number plate light out, so we'll put a bulb in there. Number plate is secure, not delaminating. Side lights are working. So I'm just going to wedge the brake pedal down now, so I can check the brake lights. Yep, all three brake lights are working. Reverse lights, they come into the test if your car is newer than 2009. So anything before 2009 doesn't have to work, although it's nice to. So I'm just going to put it in reverse now. So it's always good to have the indicators flashing when the brake lights are on, because some cars have poor earths on the back. And you've got to make sure that the indicators don't disrupt the side lights around the car, otherwise they all start flashing. So the reverse lights work on this because it's over 2009. The indicators aren't interrupting any other of the lights, so that's okay. So now, fuel cap. You can hear that sealing well. Just take it off, have a quick look at the rubber seal. Yep, that's fine, that's doing its job to make sure no fuel's leaking out from the fuel cap. So all I've done is I've checked the full bodywork of the car just by doing one big circle. So straight away there, you're checking sharp edges, everything's secure, there's nothing found. The only thing I have found is the number plate light bulb. So a tester would now check the headlight alignment. So make sure, well, if you've set it on 3, you're supposed to check it on 3. If it's out, you're allowed to put your headlight alignment to 0 and check it then. Now, you can't check the headlight alignment, there's nothing you can do about that. If the car fails, the tester can fail the headlight alignment, but there's nothing you can do about that. It's down to the tester to adjust it anyway. So that's their own procedure. If they want to fail it and adjust it after the jobs have been done, they can do, or they can I just used to adjust it while I'm there. So now check the headlight alignment and the engine bay. So for that I need to start the engine back up. The testers always leave the engines running while you're doing the walk round check, but I just turn the engine off so you can hear me properly. So with the brake pedal still wedged down, you're checking to see if you can hear any vacuum leaks while the pedal's depressed. So that would also cause your engine to run quite badly. So this engine's running fine. I can't hear any air hissing anywhere, so I'm just going to grab my torch. So you're checking your brake fluid level, make sure it's in between minimum and maximum. You're checking the bodywork, especially if it's on an old car. You're checking the bodywork, checking around the shock absorbers, around the top for any corrosion. Any down there, any corrosion at all really. It doesn't matter if it's rust, but any rot. Rot is serious. Well, this one's alright. Down the structural chassis arms, what we're called now. It'll come to me in a minute. Shocker top that side. Yeah, shocker top that side. The nuts are a bit rusty, but that's not a problem. Yeah. Slam panels are right. Front slam panels are right. This is an automatic, so there's another radiator to check. So you're checking for oil leaks from the actual cooling system to the gearbox as well. Yep. Checking for any oil leaks, checking for any coolant leaks from the top of the engine. Grab your battery, make sure that's nice and secure. That's alright. Again, this side, yeah. No corrosion on here. Now, on some cars it's easier to check when the bonnet's down, but now's a good time. Just give your wipers a bit of a wobble, make sure they're not split at the ends. If they're not, they're fine. Have a look around the ABS pump and any brake pipes you can see to make sure there's no fluid leaking. If there's not. Radiator leaks. No, belt looks alright. And also give the engine a bit of a shake. Yep, the mountings are alright. Coolant levels alright. Yep, I'm happy with that under there. It's a nice clean engine bay so you can see everything anyway. Bonnet caps, yeah, that's fine. Any corrosion on the bonnet? No, that's alright. Now it's time to get up in the air. So I've got the car up in the air now at the front. So with the engine running and the brake pedal still depressed, I'm just checking the hoses that go to each caliper. So front end up in the air, turn the steering wheel to allow you to see the hose. I'll just zoom you in. So this hose goes to the caliper, all the way up behind the shock absorber and to behind the union behind the spring. So you're checking this hose for any leaks, but mostly bulges and perishing as well. I know on some Peugeots they do suffer from perishing. So that one's alright. I see, I'll just put it the other way so I can check the other side. You see it there, look. So there's no bulges or perishing. So I'll just go around the other side and check that one. Yeah, that one's alright. So obviously you're going to check the rears as well. Now this having discs on the back, I can see them. So I've just had a quick look now, and they're not perishing, there's no leaks and there's no bulges. It's same on the other side as well. So if you can see the brake pipes, the steel brake pipes that run around the car, it's always best to check them when the engine's running and the brake pedal's down under pressure. But usually if the steel pipes are leaking, they leak with no pressure on at all. So as long as you check the rubber hoses, that's fine. You can now turn the engine off and take the wedge out of the brake pedal. Under the car now. So all you're looking for is any oil leaks on the engine, any oil leaks from the gearbox. You're checking the radiators, making sure that not leaking coolant. On this one in particular, it's got an oil cooler for the automatic gearbox. So the pipes which run down there, they're alright, there's no leaks. Checking the stabiliser mounting for the engine, which is alright. Have a look at the inner CV boots on the drive shafts. So they're alright, just spin the wheel so you can see our way around them. Same on the near side. Yeah, they're alright. You can see the steering rack better now as well. So any sort of leak from the steering rack. The subframes, checking for excessive corrosion. So this one's alright. Subframe mounts, you can actually see under the chassis. So they're alright. There's nothing rubbing against the engine. The exhaust system's alright. Grab the anti-roll bars, and you can even look at the anti-roll bar bushes as well if you want to. Yeah, there's no play in that. The anti-roll bar goes over the top. Yeah, they're alright. Check on the side. Yeah, they're alright. So if the engine's leaking oil, it is an advisory unless it's really major. I think when the engine's running, it's got to produce, I think it's 6 mil off the top of my head. I have to have a look in the manual. But if it's constantly dripping oil out or more running, that's the only time an engine can fail on an oil leak. It's literally got to be running out. So everything under here is alright. Can't see any problems anywhere. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Right, we can now check the suspension and the tyres at the front. Now obviously straight away you can see this tyre is worn on the outer edge. In places it is bald. There, look. It's bald on the outer edge. This is not a fail. Just because a tyre is bald on the outside does not necessarily mean it's a fail. The tyre is judged within the central 3/4 of the tread. So if you've got 1.6 mil or over in the middle of the tread, within the central 3/4 of the tread, this tyre is legal. There's actually, so you can see that, 3 millimeters of tread. 3. So this tyre is perfectly legal. It's just worn on the outer edge. This would be an advisory. But with the tyres as well, you've got to check around them. So you're checking for any bulges, you're checking for any cuts that's down to cords, and especially on these bald bits here, you're checking for any cotton or cords that might be hanging out. So the tread's alright. Just check the inside. No bulges on the inside. No bulges or cuts on the outside. Now is a good time, if you're like me working in your drive, to spin the tyre to see if the alloy is straight. So if there's any flat marks in the alloy, you will pick it up when you spin the wheel. Which that one's alright. While the steering's locked over, you can turn the wheel to check the CV boot. I'll just show you under here. So you're checking for the wheel, make sure it's nice and round, no flat spots in the alloy. You're also checking the CV boot to see if there's any leaks. Usually when the CV boot leaks, there's grease splattered everywhere. Well, that's okay. You're checking the brake disc on the inside for any cracks or corrosion. Same as the outside. You straighten the steering up. You can see the brake pads through alloys like this. So they're not even half worn on the front. So you grab the wheel at 10 to 3 and you're pushing from side to side. And by doing that, you can pick up any play in any steering ball joints or the bottom arm ball joint. And this is none. So after you've done that, I then just put that wood there to give it more leverage. Get your crowbar or pry bar, and you're just lifting it up just to check the top mounting on the shock absorber to make sure the bush is okay. There's no movement in that. So quick shake at 6 o'clock. And you're checking the wheel bearing at the same time by doing that and by doing that. You then spin the wheel and you're listening for the wheel bearing. Now that's really quiet. A wheel bearing can only be failed for excessive play and rough when rotated. So if the wheel bearing's got a tiny bit of play in it, it's not a fail, it's an advisory. If the wheel bearing's noisy, or well, if you can hear the wheel bearing, it doesn't automatically fail. It has got to be rough. And a little tip for showing rough wheel bearings is to spin the wheel and put your hand on the spring. If there's any rough wheel bearings, it vibrates through the hub onto the shock absorber, and the spring vibrates and you can feel it really clear. So that's how to tell if there's a wheel bearing that's rough. But also there's like a thudding. When you spin it, you can hear it going doof 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 doof. It sounds stupid, but that's what you're listening for. Usually with rough wheel bearings as well, when you're driving the car down the road, it's really noisy inside. So there's loads of telltales about a wheel bearing going. This, I drove it up here today and I can't find any. There's no knocking noises, there's no rough wheel bearings. It drives lovely. So advise on that tyre, but it is not a fail. So with the steering on full lock, you're looking at this boot. This is the steering rack boot cover. So you're checking that there's no splits in that. You're also checking that there's no leaks, because if there's a leak coming out of this, that means the steering rack's leaking and that is a fail. With ball joints, you can see this one there on the anti-roll bar. You're checking all these ball joint covers. So there's two on the anti-roll bar on the top there, that one's alright. And there's one, see if I can get the camera around. That is your trackwood end dust cover. And there's one at the bottom, down there, for the bottom arm ball joint. So you're checking that dust cover as well there. You're checking them for splits and any grease leaking out. If they are split, but still doing their job as a dust cover, it is an advisory only. If they're split and you can see the ball joint and they're no longer preventing dirt ingress or water, it's a fail. You've got to check the spring and the shock absorber. So around these parts you're looking for any oil from the shock absorber, which this one's bone dry, but you're also checking that the spring isn't broke. So sometimes you have to turn the steering to be able to look, but then you've got to look at the top of the spring as well. So I've had a quick look, there's no breaks in this spring. From the brake pipe, you're checking then the steel brake pipes to make sure they're not corroded. Now Japanese cars have a little rubber cover that usually goes over them, so the ends are the only ones that rust. Now these were alright, because I've checked them as well. So you've got to check the size of the tyres as well. So on BMWs, they're usually different size tyres that's on the rear compared to the front. It is legal to have bigger tyres on the back or different size tyres on the back, as long as the tyre opposite is exactly the same size. It's a pass. So the driver's side front tyre is a 215 55/17 and the passenger side tyre is a 215 55/17. If this was a different size on the passenger side, it would be a fail. I'll come round the other side now. Same again. Check the tyre. Now this tyre's not very old by the looks of it, so check all around. I can see the tread spine. There's no cuts. There's no bulges in the outer sidewall. Another one. There's no bulges on the inner sidewall. Spin the wheel. Now that wheel's got a little flat spot in it, so I'll show you. So spinning the wheel, you can see it there. So the wheel's got a bit of a flat spot in it, but it's not a fail, it's only very slight. So that will be an advisory if you're quite keen. So again, torch, check those the spring and the shock absorber. Yeah, that's alright. It's not broke. And it's also not rough when you rotate it. There's a bearing on the top of the shock absorber. They sometimes can be rough and it causes the spring to jolt round. But again, you can hear that when you're driving it. Just from turning the steering wheel, there's usually a big boingy, springy sound. So yeah, check the brake pipe, I've checked the hose. I'll just check the... Right, there's some play here. Feels like a bottom ball joint. Just from that. There's no up and down play, so that rules the bearing out. Yeah, that's not noisy, so let's check that play. I don't know if the camera will pick it up. That does feel like a bottom ball joint. So just check the shocker top now. Right bar underneath. Yeah, that's okay. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but it's definitely a bottom ball joint that's got play in it. But also, I don't know if I said earlier on, you check the suspension bushers. Now that is just starting to detach. So it's a full bottom arm that needs replacing anyway. So luckily it's killed two birds with one stone. Now there's no movement in that bush. So it's that's probably not even an advisory. I wouldn't advise that myself. But it's just something that's just starting to detach. So with the car still up in the air at the front end, you're now going to check the sills. Now on the older cars, especially older Japanese cars, the sills are prone, especially if they're exposed. Now you can't do a lot with these because they're covered in plastic, but you still need to check them. So you're going to check the entire sills, because if there's any corrosion around the seatbelt mounts, it's a fail. So all this sill is solid. There's nothing wrong with that. The fuel lines are on the other side and the brake pipes are on the other side. So while you're checking the sill on the driver's side, you're also checking the pipes for any leaks. Also checking corrosion. While you're under here, you can check the exhaust. So there's no blowing with the cat. An MOT tester will have already checked the exhaust while the engine's running, because they've got to send the car up in the air to be able to jack the front wheels up. So if you're a tester watching this, while the car's up in the air with the brake pedal depressed and the engine running, check the exhaust and check the brake pipes. But if you're doing it on your drive, it's best to do it now. So you're checking as well. Just be careful in case it's still hot from the engine running. You're checking it's nice and secure. You're checking to see if it's not blowing, and you're also checking to see if it's not fouling on any bodywork, which this isn't. You're also checking to make sure it has a catalytic converter fitted. Now this one's got two. So they're all fitted. There's no blowing. The fuel tank's not leaking. And the sill is okay. So I'll just go down and check the driver's side now. And then you'll join me at the back when I've got the back of the car jacked up. So got the rear up in the air now. Near enough the same procedure for the front. You're checking springs, you're checking shock absorbers for leaks and bushers. You're checking the suspension bushers for detaching or even having excessive play. You're checking the tyre. Now the first thing I can see about this tyre is it's perished, it's cracking. Now this is just an advisory. There's no structural failure of the tyre, there's no bulges. It's still got plenty of tread on it, so it's just an advisory. That is not a fail. The only time if it's a fail is if you can see cords through the cracks, but then it needs to be majorly perished, which you probably had a blowout by then. So same again, 6 o'clock, 2:45, that's fine. That's just the brakes catching. There's no rough wheel bearings. Have a look at the pads. Now the pads are low on the back, so they're within, well they're not, I think it's 1mm the pads have to be a fail. So there's more than 1mm on the pads, so they're a pass. So you can only advise that the brakes are low on the back. It still pulls efficiency through the brake rollers. It's just an advisory. So same again, we'll check the tyre. I'll turn the torch on. So there's not much perish in the tread. Now the tread, tread depth gauge. The tread is just over 2mm. So that tyre is still legal, even though it's low. So again, just an advisory. Thing to check with old tyres like this is if they're going out of shape. So just spin the wheel, keep your eye on the tread, and if there's any tyre that's out of shape, especially on the inside, you'll get a ripple effect. So that's alright. Check the alloy wheel. Yeah, that's nice and straight. I'll just quickly do the other side and then we can go underneath the back. And don't forget to check the shocker bushes. They're alright. So underneath the car, you're checking your springs, make sure they're not broken, which they're not. You're checking the exhaust for corrosion, any leaks, and also to make sure it's secure. I always check the back end to make sure, well, I'm looking for impact damage. Check all the arms, check right in the corners because that's where most cars corrode. So you're checking all the boot floor. Sometimes it's easier to go through the boot to check the floor, but on the Dukes they've got a really deep boot, so it's actually easier to go straight underneath and have a look around. So there's small brake flexes here, so they're not perished. The brake pipes go all along the axle into the caliper, and they're alright. Back axle bushes, they're not detaching. Now at a test station, if it's one man testing bay, they've got what's called checker plates on the ramps. So when the brakes were wedged on, they'll go underneath and they'll shake the car from side to side to see if there's any play in any bushes. That is pretty hard to do when you're on your back, so you just look at the average condition of them. But I'll show you a check for the bushes, which is last when all the weight is back on the car and the brakes are off. So I'll show you that when I've finished looking underneath. Checking the fuel filler, make sure there's no splits. Usually if there's a split in a fuel line, with this being a petrol, you can smell it instantly. So these pipes are all alright under here. Exhaust shields are alright. Handbrake cables, these are inboard shoes. On normal handbrake systems I always look, especially if the handbrake's on the caliper, to make sure it's not being over adjusted or sticking on. But on the Dukes they're inboard shoes, so you can't really tell, but you can just see the brake pads, and they're low but they're not that low to fail them. Check the spare wheel well. Yeah, that's alright. It's in really good condition underneath this. Yeah, no leaks from the fuel tank, no leaks from the shock absorbers. They're not pooling in oil, they're bone dry. Check the axle for any corrosion. Nope, that's fine. So I'll get it back on its wheels now and I'll show you how to check suspension bushes. So the car's back on its wheels now. So The only way you can really check suspension bushes is by getting a pry bar in and barring them. For an easier way, and it is, I have found quite a few bushes that are worn this way, is to take the brakes off completely on the car. Just make sure, yeah, handbrake's off and it's in neutral. Grab the wheel and just push backwards and forwards. Now if there's any bushes that's worn to the point of failure, that will show up instantly. So do the same with all four wheels. Yep, no movement in them two wheels. No. Now there's a little bit of movement in that, but that's from the ball joint and that bush that's become detached. So make sure there's no brakes on the car, and that procedure will show up any bushes that's worn. So that is the end of the inspection. What the tester will do now is put the car through a brake test. Now you can't test that, I can't test that on my driveway. The only way you can test that is just to, like testing the handbrake, keep the car rolling very slowly, pull the handbrake up and make sure it stops. That is the, you know, it does sound pretty well done, but that is the only way to check it. If you drive the car to the test centre, just make sure it's not pulling to one side when you do press the foot brake, but also you can usually tell if there's brakes that are binding just by the colour of the discs. And that's something I forgot to mention. When you jack the car up, you've got to check for bind on the wheels, and what that means is when you spin the wheel, make sure the brake's not grabbing. So if you're really struggling to spin the wheel, that is also a fail. So what the tester will do now is put it in the brake rollers, carry out the brake test, and once he's done that, he'll then do the emissions. And that is why the engines are left running, to warm up the catalytic converters, so it's easier to do the emissions. They've got to be at running temperature to do it. So there's no way you can really check the emissions. If there's something wrong with the fuel system, say like an air leak around the vacuum pipes, the engine management light usually comes on to tell you there's a problem. The other thing you can do is when the car's up to operating temperature, if you just stand near the back of the car, if there's anything wrong with the fuel mixture, you can usually smell it. And if the catalytic converter is not working properly, you can definitely smell it. So any blowing in the exhaust, that's the only thing you can check for that will affect the emissions. So after looking around this Nissan Juke, unfortunately it will be a fail. It needs a bulb in the number plate light, the air freshener's taken out of the windscreen, which I just do, when I used to test I used to take them out anyway. It needs a bottom ball joint. They're the failure items. The advisories are the rear brake pads, the driver's side front tyre, and both rear tyres for being perished. So other than that, it's a nice car. So they're the little jobs that need doing for the test. I think it's due, I think she said it was due in a month's time. So it's always better to have a look round them to see if they need anything for the MOT. It's always better, in my opinion, if you keep on top of the jobs. Then you're not risking a breakdown if you're going on a long journey. You're not risking things failing. If you are becoming an MOT tester, get a procedure. The more of a procedure that you set for yourself, you can do it any way you want, as long as you check everything and it suits you, do it. Because there's no point in getting out of the car and thinking, oh, I haven't checked the seatbelt, so you're getting back in the car to check it. You know, you need a procedure if you are becoming a tester. So I hope this has helped you out. Good luck with your testing license. If you are just looking at prepping your car for an MOT, this is what testers look at. So I hope it helped you out. Have a look at the rest of the channel for more car stuff, and thank you all for watching.